Now that I'm completely blinded, I'm just going to assume everybody is in their seats, and we'll start our program. Good evening, everybody. It's a real treat to have you back in the house for our speaker series. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Andy Roden, and I'm the head of Phoenix Country Day School. We've got scores of fabulous programs and offerings here at PCDS, and one of my absolute favorites is the MAVERICK Speaker Series, in part because it's open to the entire public. I think that's a really special thing that we're able to do on certain nights. Launched in 2018 and named in honor of the late Senator John McCain, the MAVERICK Speaker Series is proud to host visionaries who, like Senator McCain, have blazed their own trails in the world. Phoenix Country Day shares the Senator's devotion to nurturing character-driven leaders of tomorrow who will work tirelessly and collaboratively in order to achieve true progress in their chosen field. With a brief word about the importance of carrying on this undaunted spirit, I'd like to introduce past PCDS parent and current Senior Director of Arizona Programs at the McCain Institute, Mrs. Claire Merkel.
Good evening, everyone. Boy, he's not kidding about being blinded up here. I am just so thrilled to be here tonight, and thank you for welcoming me back to PCDS. I'm honored to represent the McCain family, and I'm also a parent of two PCDS grads, class of 2017 and 2018, and a great fan of the education that they received here that definitely started them on the pathway to success in college. I am thankful for Doc Allison and her diligent work in teaching them to write well every single day. And I saw you somewhere, Doc Allison. It's nice to see you again. My purpose here tonight is to share a bit about the McCain family as we celebrate the John S. McCain MAVERICK Speaker Series. I can think of no one that better exemplifies the MAVERICK spirit of Senator McCain than Dr. Harvey Alter, a Nobel Prize winner in medicine. When Andy Roden and Roz Abrero first approached me about naming a speaker series after Senator McCain, it was not too long after his passing. And there were many people asking to name things after him. When I spoke to Mrs. McCain about it, she was delighted, immediately said yes to PCDS, and felt that it was such a fitting tribute. She loves the MAVERICK series name, and she was honored to be the first series speaker. Senator McCain lived every day of his life to the fullest, and many times on the edge. The edge is where discoveries are made in medicine and elsewhere. He was not afraid to be the first or the last to champion an idea that he believed had merit. Some called him stubborn. I saw a determination to leave the world a better place and stand up for those who couldn't fight for themselves. I worked for him in a number of capacities over the course of my career and still work for the McCain Institute, which exists to champion the values in which he so deeply believed, defend democracy and freedom, and make a positive difference. I promised an update on the McCain family. Mrs. McCain first. Now, Ambassador McCain would have enjoyed being with you here this evening. She has recently taken up her post after being nominated and confirmed to be U.S. Ambassador to the UN Agency for Food and Agriculture. She is based in Rome, Italy. Not too tough duty, right? She arrived in Rome in early January, I believe just about 1 month to the day from today, and immediately got to work presenting her credentials. She is a lifelong humanitarian, and her work has prepared her well for this important post, and she will do great things there. I spoke with her about this evening, and she sends her very best to PCDS, and her congratulations to Dr. Alter. Next, Megan McCain, a former PCDS student, is now a columnist for the UK publication The Daily Mail. She is thoroughly enjoying new motherhood, her toddler daughter, Liberty Sage, as well as a bit more flexibility in her schedule to enjoy her daughter. Many of you, I'm sure, have seen her during her long run on The View and other radio and TV appearances. Mrs. McCain still describes her as John McCain in a dress. Jack McCain, also a former PCDS student, graduated from the Naval Academy in Annapolis. He was stationed in Guam and San Diego, received a graduate degree from Georgetown, and then taught at both the Naval Academy and Georgetown. He's a helicopter pilot who deployed to Afghanistan and spent a year training Afghan pilots. He is still a proud naval officer and is currently deployed somewhere where he is needed most. He was appointed a couple of weeks ago to the U.S. Naval Academy Board of Visitors and is very, very humbled and honored by this appointment. We all look forward to welcoming him back to Phoenix upon his completion of this deployment when he will return to his job at American Airlines. Jack has one son, John S. McCain V, an adorable little guy that we all call Mac. Jim McCain, the third child of Senator and Mrs. McCain to attend PCDS, completed officer candidate school last week. He graduated and is now a second lieutenant in the Army. He enlisted in the Marines at age 17 after having to obtain his mother's agreement and signature to join before he turned 18. He's an accomplished sniper and served 3 tours in Iraq with the Marines and later in Afghanistan with the Army. After his tour in Afghanistan, he returned to Arizona and graduated with a degree in history from ASU. He went on to get a master's degree from Trinity College in Dublin before returning to the Army and officer candidate school. Jim and his wife Holly, who were here 2 years ago for this series, have 2 sons, Luke, and a 5-month-old named Killian. And for those of you who were here at the last Maverick Speaker event, Jim introduced Ambassador Roya Rahmani, Ambassador of Afghanistan to the U.S. And I wanted to give a quick update to all of you on her as well. She was not able to return to Afghanistan, as you might have imagined, when the Taliban returned to power. She remains in D.C., where she's a distinguished fellow at Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace, and Security, a senior advisor to the Atlantic Council, and a senior fellow at the New America Foundation. And she is well. The youngest member of the family, Bridget McCain, who did not attend PCDS, but is still doing very, very well, finishing up a degree in special education and enjoying being Aunt Bridget to her niece and nephews. As you can see, all of the McCains are serving elsewhere this evening. They send their congratulations to Dr. Alter and best wishes for a successful evening and their sincere thanks for honoring Senator McCain's legacy in this way. Thank you.
"35 years ago, I began my official and impatient courtship of Lydia Dowling. I was 17 and I would swing by her house on DeRussy Parkway nearly every afternoon or evening with some kind of excuse just so I could see her. Really romantic stuff like, would she like to watch Cheers together? Had I left my backpack in her living room? Would she like some of my leftover pizza? Super impressive. While my laser focus was almost exclusively on winning Lydia's affection, I couldn't help but notice that there was a possible parallel process going on in the very same house. Turns out, Harvey Alter, who was not 17, was also finding ridiculous reasons to swing by DeRussy Parkway. He had his eye on Lydia's amazing mother, who had been divorced a few years but was dating again. There were awkward moments when Harvey and I would arrive at the front door together. Him holding a bouquet of beautiful flowers and me holding pepperoni pizza. I had a lot to learn. What was immediately obvious was that both Harvey and I were battling significant competition for the women we were after. We were way out of our leagues with them. But we embraced the challenge together and even found ourselves rooting for each other, especially when one of us had done something stupid and might be falling out of the good graces of one of the fabulous Dowling girls. We were determined, and ultimately, thank goodness, we were both triumphant. Tonight, we're going to talk largely about Dr. Alter's extraordinary career, one filled with accomplishments and accolades of the magnitude that so few people will ever attain. Executive leadership roles at the National Institute of Health, membership in the National Academies of Sciences and Medicine, a Lasker Award for Clinical Medical Research, and of course, the Nobel Prize in 2020. But what I hope really shines through during this next hour is what an award-winning human being Harvey is. Sure, he's brilliant and determined and all kinds of successful, but he's also unusually kind and caring and big-hearted, and every once in a while, maybe just a little bit funny. I could not imagine having a more delightful father-in-law, and I'm excited to be able to share the stage with him this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our 2022 Maverick Speaker, Dr. Harvey Alter. So, as the crew here moves the podium off so that the whole crowd can see, I'm going to offer to you that I'm a little bit nervous about tonight. In particular, I don't think that Harvey and I have spent a full hour being serious together in the entire time that we've known each other. So I'm going to tread that line of professionalism as best I can and see if we can't come up with an entertaining evening for you all. So Pop Doc, you ready?
Ready.
All right, let's do it. Yeah, it's really great. Okay, off to a good start. Okay, first of all, I think we should start with the start. And I want to go back to Brooklyn. Tell us what it was like growing up in Brooklyn, where you were clearly the king of stoop ball.
Well, first of all, I hope there are people out there. I can't see a soul.
So true.
But, well, Brooklyn, I actually lived in Queens, about across the street from Brooklyn. So I always said I was from Brooklyn because people knew Brooklyn. It was a very middle-class neighborhood. It was primarily German. And it was a small Jewish community, of which I was one. And it was at a time when we were heading into World War II, which I had nothing to do with. And so in my neighborhood, there actually were German Bunds and some fascist sentiment, although I did not experience any real anti-Semitism, but that was the way it was. I remember my one of the exciting things of childhood was that they captured a German spy in the apartment house next to mine, they traced a shortwave radio to his apartment. I suspect he was listening in on our family, but I don't know that. But that was big. The FBI came on the street and took him. But mostly childhood was good. It was easy. Everything we did was with a pink Spalding ball. These were about 15 cents each, and 15 cents then was not inexpensive. But because they're very bouncy, they tended to fly over rooftops, roll down sewers. So I would need a new pink Spalding ball pretty much every week. But we played racquetball, stickball, stoop ball. Stoop ball, Andy mentioned, I don't think they play it outside of New York. But the idea was you throw the ball against the point of the steps on the stoop and see how far it would go. And it'd be a single, a double, or triple. And in fact, out here in Phoenix, I was showing Ty how to play stoop ball. And it got competitive, as things do among the Rudden boys. And I was trying to get a really good home run stoop ball and got this wrenching, I gave it my best, got this terrible searing pain in my arm. And then it went away, and at dinner time after that, I was pulling up the dining room chair, and I got this searing pain again. It turns out I had torn my biceps tendon playing stoop ball. My whole stoop ball career ended at that point. wound up in the emergency room and had this bruise like you've never seen. Unbelievable. So it's why I'm not quite as muscular as I would have been without that. But anyway, getting back to Queens was good. We walked to school about 8 blocks. Actually, about a half mile, excuse me. Walk back to get lunch at home, walk back to school. There was no cafeteria, PS 77. And then it's home, play in the streets. Didn't have parks, there were parks, but you had to go away. There were playgrounds. But it was a good childhood. It was good.
So, first of all, I'm sure this is exactly what you thought you were going to be getting when you signed up for this program tonight. Stories of Stoopball and Spalding's and Harvey's torn rotator cuff. But I will also say that what the story he just told is nothing like the stories that he's told us. School was at least a mile away. It was uphill both ways, over 100 degrees every time he had to get there. This is all news to me.
It was snowing.
Snowing. I forgot about that.
Yeah, my kids teased me about that, but it was not easy to walk back and forth to school 4 times a day.
So when do you realize that medicine is of interest to you?
Yeah. Pretty early on. I wanted to be an airline pilot. When our house was painted, I wanted to be a house painter. It wasn't a house, it was an apartment. But my father was very science-oriented. He would have been a doctor had he was one of 9 children living on the east side of Manhattan. Growing up, not much money, and so he couldn't afford to go to medical school, but he would read Science magazine. And didn't like TV very much when that came out. He would just read. So I kind of osmosed some of science. I didn't read the magazines. I didn't know much about it. But I learned that if you were, in those days at least, if you were a Jewish boy growing up in New York, it was kind of genetically predetermined you were going to be a doctor. You knew that's what your family really wanted. But it turns out that was really where my talent was, my interest. I liked biology more than math, and I was interested in being a doctor. My pediatrician, ironically, was named Dr. Butcher. but he made house calls. He was a very kindly gentleman, and I kind of, well, that would be a nice thing to do, to make house calls, which, because doctors don't do anymore, but, and be a real doctor. That was my goal. So I'd say from age 10 on, I knew that's where I wanted to be. And then I wasn't any outstanding student or anything. I got by. I did okay. I was maybe above average, but not way above average. But did okay in school, and then high school. I had to take a trolley car to high school. I couldn't walk home anymore. Got out of Richmond Hill High School just when things started to change. The neighborhood started to get rough, and the school itself turned out to be more dangerous than it was when I was there. Although I did have to fend off one fight while I was there. But what did you ask me?
You were telling us about your interest in medicine, and yeah, right.
So that was the beginning, and I just, you
got distracted by the fight, didn't you?
Yeah. I killed him.
I bet you did.
The one thing about medicine is when you do know that's what you want to do, then your path is set. So I went to college as a pre-med. I minored in English, liked the arts, but still I'm on this pathway. And I can tell a story I told today at the class, because this is my goal. My goal is to be a doctor. So I'm in college, I'm pre-med. I was at Rochester, and I got accepted to Rochester Medical School. And that was one of the greatest days of my life, comparable almost to when your children are born. It's so, wow, you're there, you finally made what you've been aiming to do. And then med school was amazing, I loved it. Every subject was interesting. It was easier, I thought, than college because it was all something you enjoyed. But I'm on this course, and I'm interning now at Rochester, and that was one of my greatest years. When you're an intern at Rochester, you're really in charge, and you learn. You're a fourth-year student in medical school, and you think you know everything, and then you're an intern, and you're having to take care of a patient, and you know nothing. And it's a steep learning curve in the first months. So you don't want to be hospitalized in July or August when the new doctors are coming. But you learn how to stick people's arms and get blood, and everything's going well. And then I get this letter from Uncle Sam, a draft letter, saying, report to Fort Dix, New Jersey on November 30th. This is in September, I'm getting this letter. And I panicked because I had already applied to NIH, which is part of the Public Health Service. And the Public Health Service is a quasi-military institution. They do have uniforms, and when I finally got there, we were called the Yellow Berets because we were dodging the draft. But in this panic, I started making calls. And I found out from the Public Health Service and from the Army that if I could get into NIH before my draft day, that would take precedence over the draft. So with a lot of calls and help from the faculty, I got to come to NIH where I'd wanted to go. So that was a transforming event because there was some Berlin crisis at that time. I would have been sent to Germany, I'm sure, which would have had some pluses. But then I definitely would have been a practicing physician. I would have gone into clinical practice, which was my aim anyway. But at NIH, I got involved in research, and turns out my first research project, by chance, turned out to be important. And it was part of the discovery of hepatitis B virus. But even with that, I was still dedicated to going into medicine, not research. And then the guy I worked with on the hepatitis B project, who later got the Nobel Prize for that, moved to Philadelphia, and he asked me to come with him. And I said, no, I want to be a doctor. I don't want to be research. So I didn't go with him, and I finished my clinical training, and then went to Georgetown Hospital for a hematology fellowship. And then the second thing happened that was life-changing, because when I finished my fellowship, I applied for a prestigious practice position in Washington, and then didn't get it. And I was a little bit crestfallen because I was sure I would get it. And they told me it wasn't me, it was, it wasn't me as you, it was me. They said they wanted a cardiologist who they took, but it turned out I became a patient in that same practice and still am. But my boss said, stay here, stay in Georgetown on the faculty, and you can always go and practice later. So, and as an inducement, he offered to double my salary from $6,000 a year to $12,000 a year, which in 1960 you could live on. It was 65, I guess, by then. So again, had I gone into practice, I would have had a different life. I would have may have been great, but it wasn't the life I have had, and it wouldn't have been. I don't think as satisfied. I think I was cut out to see patients, but see them in a clinical setting where you could study them, and that was so beautiful about NIH. You could spend time with patients. There was no 15-minute interview. You took whatever time you needed. They could stay in the hospital as long as they needed to stay. You had internal support for your research. And I got called back to NIH in 1970 and then spent the rest of my career there doing patients research. So where I wound up was not what I planned, and what I planned. Sometimes you don't get what you plan. I meant to tell this to the students, I forgot to, but you don't always get what you plan, but what you get may be better than what you planned, and that was what happened to me.
Stick with NIH for a minute, though, because it's been such a central experience for you. What was it that, what drew you, but what also kept you there? That's been a huge piece of your life. What did you love about being at NIH?
Yeah, well,
besides the cafeteria.
As I say, it's a very unique hospital. If you got appendicitis, you don't want to come to NIH. But if you have some disease that somebody's studying, because everybody there is on a protocol. You come in as a research patient, and that sounds kind of guinea piggish, but in fact you come in and you don't pay for any of your care. As I said, you can stay as long as is needed to treat you. There's a nice ratio of healthcare workers to patients. And the patients love to be part of a study. They know that they're contributing to some question, because they've read their consent form. And Ken says that we are studying X, and we want to do this to you, and we don't know what's going to help you. We don't know what's going to help mankind, but it might. And so the patients become part of the study. And your relationship with the patient, when patients don't pay, it changes the whole doctor-patient relationship. They're just there to get better and to help humanity at the same time. It's a very different dynamic than anything else. And so I like to schmooze with the patients. I could really spend time with them, and then follow them. I've followed some of my patients for 30 years in one study. And then you're in a project, and you don't know where it's going. And if I said to somebody, if I had applied for a grant and said, well, I need a 30-year grant to find a new virus, you don't get that. So you don't know where you're going. So all we had a simple question was, we knew patients who got transfused got hepatitis, but we didn't know how often it was. We didn't know what really caused it completely. So that was our question, just how often does it happen? What are the causes? And then each thing led to another. We found out that it was bad to use paid donor blood, and that completely, or a lot, helped to clean up the blood supply. And then when we found that most of the cases weren't due to hepatitis B, the kind of hepatitis that's spread by either sexual or needle stick transmission. And then some of our buddies at NIH discovered the hepatitis A virus, and we tested these samples for A, and it wasn't A, and those were the only two known viruses. So then it was, one of my really brilliant things is I said, well, if these cases are not A and they're not B, I'll call them non-A, non-B. And we said that because we hadn't yet proven it was a virus, and if we didn't know how many viruses, so we didn't call it hepatitis C at the time. But now we had a new thing. It was something was out there that was due. So that, I mean, that's how NIH works. You get these little, you see the patients, then you write it up what you find, and then you go. And I always worried that I wouldn't know what to do next, but what to do next just becomes obvious. I told the students today. There's no elevator to success. You have to take the stairs. And it's really a step by step process. And I was just lucky because it kept unfolding. There were interim gains that kept exciting. I always enjoyed coming to work. I never didn't want to come into work. And I'll tell you, your work doesn't end at the end of the day. You bring stuff home, and you're always busy. You have to have a very supportive family. Thank you, Diane. Yeah. But it's really gratifying.
Yeah, I noticed that you used enjoyed going to work as if it's a past tense kind of a thing. I don't sense that that's a past tense deal for you.
Well, it's pretty past tense.
So tell us a little bit about I know you love the lab and you love the team, and that's what I've heard you talk most about and where I've seen you get most excited. Tell us about the team, and then maybe about where you've bumped into some opposition along the way.
Well, you always, nobody does research by themselves, and you need good people around you, but even more, not just the people that you hire, who I've been lucky. I've found good people, and they stayed for a long, long time. So I had a very solid, long-term team. But also, NIH is filled with people, good people. So collaborations are very important. I always tell this to young people, you need to collaborate. You need to share your data, you need to share your resources, and you need to steal stuff from other people. And so I had great collaborators, and you just don't have a single author paper anymore, unless it's a review article or something, but it's always a group. And that's more and more true because the technology is so phenomenal, the complexity of it, and you can now study a single cell and get inside a cell, stuff that I can't do now, but that's where the field is moving. You've heard of CRISPR, insert genes, take out genes. It's just amazing stuff. But all this excitement is going on around you, and you hear these lectures, and it's so what's not to like? It's good, and there weren't a lot of obstacles. Money depended on who was in the government at the time. And there were times when your funding was down, times when it was good. So there were those obstacles, but we never were without funding. So it was things always kept going. And as I say, nowhere I couldn't have done these long-term prospective studies anywhere else. They just could not have been done. So that was the beauty of the NIH thing. And the best stuff that I'm part of has really been in collaborations.
Yeah. So there's the crowning achievement. There's the Nobel Prize. Tell us a little bit about what it was like to find out that you'd won such a prestigious award.
Well, that's a story. I was not expecting any Nobel Prize, and at 4:15 in the morning on October 5th, 2020, the phone rang. It was the house phone. And we never answer the house phone. And when you do, it's always somebody wants to extend your car warranty. So I didn't answer it, but I was annoyed. It woke me up, and Diane woke Diane up. About 10 minutes later, they called again. Well, there was a call again, and now I was getting really annoyed, but I still didn't answer it. And then the third time they called, I got up, I went out of the bedroom into the hallway, and I'm just really ready to lay into them. And this guy, this is Thomas Perlman from Stockholm, and you won the Nobel Prize. And then you're kind of shocked. I mean, I didn't know what to say because I had never won a prize before. And so eventually I was able to thank him and show some excitement. One of the other winners, I shared the prize with two other people, and one of them absolutely thought it was a hoax, and kept asking, who is this and what is this? But anyway, I came back to bed, and Diane had fallen back to sleep. And I woke her and I said, Diane, that was the Nobel Prize committee, and I won the Nobel Prize. And she says, stop joking. I'm joking. And so then I had to convince Diane that I won the prize. Then I got a call from Francis Collins. Oh, in between I spoke to the Swedish TV. And we wound up saying this was the best wake-up call I've ever gotten. And then I got a call from Francis Collins, the director of NIH, a guy who headed the Genome Project. And he congratulated me, and he says, I always get up on October 5th to see if anybody from NIH got the award. I had no idea that October 5th was the day they told people they got the award. So he said, it might help if I set up a press conference. Would you like me to do that? Otherwise, you get called by everybody. So I said yes. So I went into NIH. I got dressed in between. Went to NIH and had the press conference, and everybody you ever heard of in news was there. They were listed on a board. And I was there with Dr. Collins and John Gallen, the head of research at NIH and the CEO of NIH, of the Clinical Center. And at the end of the session, which went reasonably well, John Gallen said to me, he says, now you can get anything you want. And so I just tucked that away in the back of my head. And I went out across the street to go to my car. We were parked in a garage across the street. And I'm walking in the garage to get my briefcase and go over to my office. And a guard stops me. And he says, you can't go in there. I said, no, I'm already been through COVID screening. Or they not COVID at that time, but they swab your car for explosives. I've already been through the check. My car is in the garage. I just want to go to my car, get my briefcase, and go to my office. He said, no, you can't do that. You have to go up the hill and around the corner. And that was leading me around to the front entrance of the hospital. So I said, no, you don't understand. I've already been through all that. I just want to go in. He said, no, you go up the hill and around the corner. So then I thought of what John Gallen told me. So I said, would it make any difference if I told that today I won the Nobel Prize? He says, that's nice. Now you go up the hill and around the corner. So you don't get everything you want.
You don't. Yeah. That's awesome. All right, here's what I want to do. We had a number of people chime in with questions that they had for Harvey from far and wide. And I've grabbed a handful of them that I thought I would roll out, and you can give short answers, long answers, is up to you, okay? So the first one is actually from a PCDS grandparent from back east, wants to know how you feel about the new name for the Washington football team, the Washington Commanders.
It wouldn't take a Nobel Prize winner to come up with a better name than the Commanders. And they made such a big deal out of it, and then came up with something so blah. So it stinks. Yeah.
Long-suffering Washington football team fan here. All right, a recent PCDS alum from California, what advice would you give to high school or even college students about pursuing a career in medicine? Specifically, do you feel like it's something that you need to settle on early, right away, and launch, or can you grab onto it later?
You can grab onto it later. You know, I said with my course, it was kind of early, but my son went to college wanted to be a lawyer, then he wanted to be a businessman, and it wasn't until senior year that he decided to be a doctor, and he made it. So the timing is not so important. It's the interest and the commitment, the willingness to do it. It's not an easy course, but it's a good course. I would still recommend it. I think it's much harder to be in medicine now. It's much harder to be in clinical practice because of all the oversight you have to go through, and the paperwork and the insurance and all that. And a lot of doctors are dropping out, at least the old timers. And it's hard in research because it's hard to get funding. But still, I can't think of anything more rewarding to do, and I would still recommend it. I think it's just, if you have any leanings at all towards biology and medicine, it's just the combination of seeing patients and answering questions and making people healthier. It just can't beat it. So I would still recommend. I'd still do it again, clearly, if I could.
Mm-hmm. A little bit more detailed question from a high school junior. Could you discuss whether mRNA vaccines could become the new paradigm for vaccination against viruses like Hep B, C, and HIV?
Yeah, well, the messenger RNA technology was a real breakthrough. It seemed like it came just with COVID, but it was really in the works for about 10 years. And it took some special tweaks to make it work. So we don't know how widely it can be used in other viruses, but I don't see why it cannot. As we're seeing, though, the problems with hepatitis C virus and HIV and coronaviruses, which we're facing now, they all are RNA viruses, and RNA viruses mutate very rapidly. And so you do something to control it, and then it mutates to something else. So that's what we're going through now with COVID. We had Delta, now Omicron, and something else is coming along now. So your vaccines are always going to be a little bit behind the curve. And the viruses, it's as if they had a brain. They learn to evade whatever the humans do, and then we learn to overcome the viruses, and they learn to do it. But their brain is their ability to mutate. And just by chance, some mutation will give them an advantage to replicate better or to somehow survive better. That's why Omicron took over so rapidly. It attached to the receptors better, and it outcompeted the Delta agent. So that's what viruses do. That's what they'll always do. So the aim now is to do maybe a messenger RNA, but to direct it not against a single spike protein, which is what they do now. As you know, the coronavirus has a crown of spiky things around it, and that's where the virus attaches to the host. And so what you're trying to do is make an antibody to attack this attachment site on the virus, which is what has been done, and it does work. The antibodies we have now do work, not in preventing infection, but in preventing serious disease. So that the people who are getting sick now from Omicron are people who have been unvaccinated. People who have been vaccinated are still getting infected, but they're not getting sick. But the real goal is to get an antibody that's directed against a piece of the virus that doesn't change, something that is so conserved. And things that are conserved in a virus are conserved because they're essential to the viral lifespan. So if you could develop an antibody to not the spike part, but the part just below the spike, that not change. Then the antibody would work for long term. So that's one goal now. Another, people are developing antibodies against multiple spikes. So they'll take the spikes from all kinds of different variants and then try to develop an mRNA against that. And I just read a paper of a clever thing using a decoy. So that what they do, the virus attaches to a specific receptor in the body called the ACE2 receptor. And every cell in the body has an ACE2 receptor. Some have more than others. The lungs are particularly rich in them. So the virus is this virus spike is trying to get into this ACE2 receptor site. So if you could develop something like the receptor, which they have done, so they know what the ACE2 receptor looks like, they changed it a little bit. And then you flood the system with these fake receptors. And then the virus will be blocked. It'll get covered over by receptors that won't really be on cells. So that's another approach now to doing it. But the short answer is the mRNA technology is very good. It's rapid. You can develop new ones fast. But it's not the final answer. The final answer will be something even more sophisticated.
Mm-hmm. That was a little snapshot of Thanksgiving dinner at our house. So this is from an upper school faculty member, and they ask, is it true that you actually beat Tony Fauci in a foul shooting contest? And could you tell a little about your long-standing relationship with Dr. Fauci?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, the only reason I got the shot off was because he was way shorter than I am. But now, Fauci is amazing. He's been both a hero and he's been vilified, which the latter being a shame, really, because he's always, before COVID, he worked on AIDS, and he's always tackled the hardest problems. He works 16-hour days all the time. He's always there on weekends. You see his car all the time. He's incredibly bright. And with the AIDS, people were protesting against him on the campus because they felt he wasn't doing enough to get AIDS treatments. And he sat down with the biggest protesters and talked to them, found out what the issues were, and addressed them, set up universal AIDS prevention programs and treatment programs. So what he did there was amazing. With COVID, the same. He took it on. You can't predict what was going to happen with COVID. You know, you make your best guesses as you go along. So that's what he did. He made the best guesses. The best guesses was to wear masks and to stay away from people. That's been true back from the plagues in the Middle Ages. They finally learned, well, we don't have anything to treat plague, but if we stay in our houses, or if we wear masks, we're less likely to get plague. And that's true of COVID. It's true of every infection. It's true of the flu. You wouldn't get the flu this year if you wore your mask. So he's done an incredible job under huge pressure and unfair criticism, I think. You know, he's really one of the heroes of this epidemic, and there shouldn't be any question about it. It's just the way our country is going right now. And he's a nice guy besides that.
A couple more questions. Let's start with this. A PCDS parent asks, what do you see as the most important considerations in the field of medicine through the next generation? Like, what are we as a country, or even a global civilization, going to need to figure out?
Well, I think, you know, there's two things. One is viruses that they're going to keep hitting us over time. You know, we still got Ebola out there. We got malaria. We got all kinds of parasite, not a virus, but still we have a lot of things still that are going to cause disease. But the other thing is cancer. We're doing better with cancer. But as our population ages, cancers are still going to occur. And we don't have the magic bullet for cancers. So though many now can be treated, it is way better than we were. Have been advances in leukemia and breast cancer and other things. But solid organ cancers still kill a lot of people. And I think that's been the frontier since Nixon's time when he had a fight on cancer, and it still is not completely resolved. There's a lot of money that goes into cancer research. And now that we know so much now about how cells work and what goes on inside a cell, what would make a cell become cancerous. Those things are becoming known. So once you have to have the knowledge first. Once you have the knowledge, then you can go to the treatments. So I think we have better and better treatments, but still for the next decades, solving the cancer riddle, things like lung cancer, pancreatic cancer, those are still big problems. The trend now is to use immunotherapy, and that's being very, very helpful. To let your own body rev up your own immune system to attack the cancer cells. And that is working in some tumors. So I think those are the main medical issues. The big issue, of course, is global warming. I think that's a scientific issue. That's, I don't know what's going to get us first, the global warming or the viruses, but they're out to get us. And that's where we need to put real resources we are smart. We're smarter than the viruses, but and now we have artificial intelligence, which is being used as well. But those are, I see, as the big problems.
All right, here we go. Two of your favorite columnists, Tony Kornheiser and Michael Wilbon. Michael Wilbon, they always get their parting shots. So offer us parting shots. What do you want to leave us with?
Well, leave you with, or what would I like to leave with? I'd like to leave with a big honorarium, but
the check is in the mail.
So far they've given me a sweatshirt. But no, I'd like to leave with, I'm unprepared, but I do have a poem. And I wrote this poem at one of the nice things when you win the Nobel Prize, even though I've never gotten to Stockholm yet because of COVID, but there have been a lot of celebrations, the Swedish embassy and at NIH. So in response to that, I wrote a poem, which I think kind of summarizes my perspective on the Nobel Prize. And I called it, I Never Had No Nobel Dreams. When I grew up in Ridgewood, Queens, I never had no Nobel dreams. My goal was to hit the ball between the seams, to perhaps be a hero on one of my teams, to not have mom detect my schemes. High school was unauspicious. I mixed with the mob, did nothing suspicious. I was small for my age and basically shy. Could have been a model for Catcher in the Rye. I was not voted most likely to succeed, but there was already a hint my hair would recede. When I graduated high school, I gave no speeches. There was no sign that one day my deeds would exceed that of my teachers. Nothing about me was the fodder for memes, and certainly I never had no Nobel dreams. In my 20s, it was medical school, reading textbooks by the reams, studying cadavers splayed at the seams. From massive texts, I was sucking the nectars, studying all night and sleeping through lectures. At Rochester Med, great teachers abounded. Everything was interesting, my career choices compounded. But of Nobel thoughts, I had naughts. Then came marriage and baby screams, my first house secure in its beams. I was ready to take on whatever life deems. Children growing, my career flowing, lots of patience, lots of teaching. But deep research seemed beyond my reaching. Nobel aspirations, no one was preaching. Then an Aboriginal antigen I observed in my youth was linked to hepatitis B by Bloomberg the sleuth. Of hepatitis viruses, we were discerning the truth. For me, a chance to return to my NIH roots. Non-A, non-B arose from long prospective studies. I tracked this agent along with bright NIH buddies. And with Chiron's crony of C, there came the safest of bloodies. With this, my career advanced, but Nobel dreams I never chanced. And now my non-Nobel dream has unfolded. With new credentials, I'm suddenly emboldened. 1,000 congratulatory emails my computer uploaded. But for Nobel aspirations, I was not truly molded. I expect any day Karolinska will have annulled it, and I will be the first laureate to have his medal ungolded. To have the King of Sweden say, from Alter, we best hold it. Get the medal back before he has sold it. This award has given my life a massive shakeup. My heart and my mind are having a breakup. Strange forces are scrambling my genetic makeup. Though the leaves of my life, age will soon rake up, I'm happy to be where I am, because in life, there's no makeup. From this Nobel dream, I'm afraid to wake up. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 2020 Nobel Prize winner and the 2022 Maverick Series honoree, Harvey Alter.